Hello, this is the first day of physical geography. Typically, the majority of you are not geography majors, but I think you made an excellent choice to fill your physical science requirement by taking geography. My intention is to help you continue to move toward your personal goals, and for most of you, that is to complete your education here and transfer to university to ultimately empower your future with choices that are best for you. So, what will we be learning in this class? I bet you said something about maps. No, geographers do not simply make and study maps. In fact, we will be doing very little with place names and locations of places. Instead, we will be learning basic physical processes that shape our everyday lives. For example, why do we have seasons? Why is the sky blue? What does why does our side of the mountain get more rainfall than the other side of the mountain? Yes, you just might be the most irritating person in the car on your next road trip as you share all your new knowledge with your friends and family. But before we get to those physical geography processes, we should first understand what it means to be a geographer. In other words, what is different about how geographers study the world. Let's start here. Take the word geography and split it in two. What does the geo stand for? Geo stands for Earth. What does graphy stand for? Graphy means to write or to describe. So, what do geographers do? We write and describe, and we focus on Earth, the entire Earth. That's different than, for example, a biologist. What's the bio stand for? Life, people, animals, plants. A biologist is interested in that aspect of life. What about a sociologist? What do they focus on? Culture and society and people, right? And a biologist isn't necessarily interested in culture, and a sociologist isn't necessarily interested in the things that biologists focus on. But a geographer, what are we interested in? We're interested in all things that have to do with the planet Earth. We have a very broad perspective. We look at relationships and how things interact together, which leads us to a definition of geography. Geography is the science that studies the relationships among natural systems, geographic areas, society, cultural activities, and the interconnectedness of all of these over space. So let's break this definition down a little bit more. So, what are natural systems? That's what we're going to be doing the bulk of in this class, those physical processes over specific geographic areas. And how do those natural systems in specific geographic areas interconnect with society and cultural activities? How do they affect each other? Let me give you a really simple example. On the first day of class, I might show up wearing flip-flops to school, and most of you wouldn't even notice. Why? Because we live in Southern California where our physical environment, our climate, our sunny weather creates a cultural response, a cultural way of life that is more casual. This is a very basic example of how a physical environment affects our cultural activities. So we know that geographers analyze things with a broad perspective, and we look at the interconnectedness of people and their places, which leads us to those last two words, over space. One of the specific things about geography is how we analyze, and that is spatially. Let's look at the definition of spatial. Spatial refers to the nature and character of physical space, its measurement, interrelationships, and the distribution of things within space. But let's understand this in another way. When we analyze things spatially, and remember that is what geographers do, what we are doing is looking for patterns, looking for how things are arranged, and looking for similarities and differences on the landscape. Let's better understand this word spatial with the example that I like to call the 100th meridian example. What is a meridian? We're going to learn more about this later, but just know that meridian is just another word for longitude. You know latitude and longitude. Longitude are the lines that run north and south along the globe. Oh, and since I use directions a lot and say things like north and south, just make sure you remember that north on a map is always up, south is always down, and then you got to spell we, right? From west over to east. The 100th meridian west just happens to run right through the middle of the United States. You can see it on this map. It goes from North Dakota down to South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and runs smack dab through Texas. We're going to look at a series of maps of the United States, and we're going to analyze these maps spatially. Now remember, when we analyze something spatially, we're looking for how things are arranged on the landscape, we're looking for patterns, and we're looking for similarities and differences. So the first map that we're going to look at is a map of annual rainfall in the United States. As we look for patterns and similarities and differences on this map that shows us annual precipitation in the US, let's first notice what the colors mean. This legend tells us that the purples and the blues, we're going to find more rain, and in the reds and the oranges, we're going to find less rain. And what I can't help but notice is that there is more rain to the east and less rain in general to the west of the United States. Of course, we can also see in the western United States an area with a lot of purple and a lot of blue. We know that the northwest coast of California, that western coast of Oregon, and of course Washington gets boatloads of rain. And then we have mountain areas such as the Sierra Nevada in California that also gets a lot of precipitation. It comes in the form of snowfall. As we continue to analyze this map spatially, we've now added this 100th meridian for an extra spatial tool. And I've noticed that this yellow part of the map, which tells us that it gets about 20 inches of precipitation a year there, happens to run right down the middle of the United States. So we could say that in general, places to the east of the 100th meridian get greater than 20 inches of precipitation, while in general, places to the west of the 100th meridian get less than 20 inches of precipitation, of course, other than those places up on that northwest coast. We could continue to analyze this map spatially, but you're getting the understanding of what it means to analyze this map spatially. But remember, geographers are interested in interrelationships, how things are connected. So let's think of an economy that is going to be affected by rainfall. The best example that I could come up with would be farmland. And wouldn't it make sense that you would find more farmland in places where you have more rainfall? Well, here's another hint. If you have more than 20 inches of precipitation, in general, you don't have to irrigate. So let's look at this map. Can you almost draw in the 100th meridian without me even helping you? With plenty of rainfall east of that 100th meridian, and also those flat plains found in the Midwest, and also that good, yummy, rich, beautiful black soil, we have an area where there's a lot of farming. We can also find other patterns. For example, there's a wheat belt, and there's a corn belt, there's a dairy belt. There are regions within the United States where particular types of farming take place. Let's look at one more layer as we're continuing to look at interrelationships between this 100th 100th meridian, the United States, and rainfall. Do you think historically people settled where there was water? Well, we're going to look at a map of night lights in the US. And of course, lights mean people, so it's going to give us a good indicator of where people are settled. Again, you could probably draw that 100th meridian all by yourself just by noticing where people historically have settled in the US. But we can also see other patterns. We like settling along the coast. You can see that in that megalopolis of New York or around the state of Florida. Till you get to the Everglades, you can see a big empty spot there. Nobody's living, a few people are living in that swampy area. You can also identify important cities like Atlanta and Chicago. And you might even notice some freeways that connect from city to city. We will be talking about this word spatial in our next mini lecture, but hopefully this introduction to geography is beginning to create an understanding of how geographers analyze things, how we look at the planet. Remember, geographers, geo, Earth, we're interested in the entire planet, the cultural processes, the physical processes, and how those interact with each other, those interrelationships with each other.